Fantastic. We've got three of the biggest companies in the last 10 years that have taken huge knocks, of course, on the back of various different factors, whether they be regulations, debt cycle, the economy, and they've all, of course, suffered. And it's great to have them with us here today to discuss some of the trials and tribulations and how they're moving past that. We do need power, real estate, banks to take us to 5 trillion and beyond. So it's imperative to hear where we stand with some of our core companies. Naveen, I want to start off with you. You know, we've seen JSPL take a knock on 3 major factors: the trade war, the mining ban, power PLF prices. There have been a whole host of external factors to deal with. There may have also been a whole host of internal factors, whether it be leverage, whether it be risk-taking on and making certain decisions. What would you attribute the difficult times to?
I think it was mostly the cancellation of coal blocks in 2014, and suddenly after having invested around 75,000 crores, we were suddenly left with no fuel source. I mean, we could never imagine that Supreme Court of India would cancel all the fuel source of all the companies. More than 200 coal blocks were cancelled. And against the advice of CAG said all the coal producers should be incentivized. So we were the best performer and we were penalized 3,500 crores. So the coal blocks, coal mines were cancelled. We had to pay 3,500 crores and then we were left without fuel. So last 4-5 years, we have learned to manage without that, to run our steel plants on 100% imported coal. But obviously it has been very challenging, but I think we are coming out stronger.
Of late, I mean, just to put it into context, the stock has actually taken a knock of about 80% if we take a look at the last 10 years or so. A debt of about 45,000 crore at its peak. Now, of course, it's been moderated to about 36,000 odd. Most recently, not enough clearances now for Gare Palma. I know you were counting on that. So, you know, it's been a series of knocks. When you say that things are now getting better, where do you stand? And what are the concrete steps that you intend to take in order to get there?
So now we are also quite used to getting knocked around. Okay, so all these knocks have made us stronger. So in 2015, we won 2 coal blocks and they were both cancelled in the auctions. They were said that the price bid was not good enough. And then just recently, now we are not sure. I'm confident that we will get the coal block because we have bid in a transparent process. We have followed the Ministry of Coal process and we have won Gare Palma coal block. But we hear that because in 2015 they got more price for it and now they will be getting less price for it, so they do not want to go ahead with it. So I mean, to me, it does not sound really logical because the government must respect its own transparent process. If somebody has won the bid, they must honor it. But anyway, so we do not have any official confirmation of it. But the situation of coal is improving. I mean, coal is something which is abundantly available in the world, and India has the 3rd largest reserves of coal in the world. So there's no reason why there should be shortage of raw materials in India, especially coal. So I think it's only a matter of time that coal production will increase and we will not have this shortage.
Okay, let me turn my attention to Ravneet. And first, I must really say that we all at ET now really admire the fact that Ravneet has really taken it on the chin. He's been very open to the firing squad and answered all our questions each and every time that we've asked to interact with him. Ravneet, I think my first question today is what was the situation you found yourself in when you first decided to come into Yes Bank and turn it around?
So I think, first and foremost, like many other industries, financial services can go through cycles. Sometimes these are driven by industrial downturns, sectoral problems, cement, steel, power. And then sometimes it happens that, the world around you changes, the business environment changes, and the business model that you've operated on, which has served you very well in the past, suddenly, gets very challenged. So I think in the case of Yes Bank, that was the latter was the case, where there was a certain business model that the bank followed and which had served it very well in the past. And then suddenly you had some large exposures which faced illiquidity based on everything that was happening in the economy post last September. So yes, I mean, I think you had a situation where there were challenges with respect to the asset quality, and the bank had to find a way to be able to overcome that, reinvent itself, and then embark on a new growth phase. So I think it was very much on the crossroads when I joined the bank.
So again, to put it into context, Yes Bank, as we all know, the stock has been battered. It's down about 85% from its highs. We all know, of course, that you've been looking to raise capital, and it's been a scramble at best at times between the various factors at play. The last time we spoke, you said before the year was out, we would see that capital raise concluded. Are we still on track for that?
So we've always maintained that we will raise capital at the very earliest. Equally, given the fact that we were looking at a preferential allotment, we were very clear in terms of the partners that we wanted to bring on board. I mean, unlike, let's say, a public markets transaction, a preferential placement or an allotment, creates a different kind of a relationship between the investor and the bank. So none of that has changed. We continue to be on track, want to raise it very quickly, get back onto a growth phase. We've consolidated over a couple of quarters, and I think now we feel confident enough that once the capital is in, we can get back into growing in line with the market opportunity.
Most of the other major banks, they've managed to sort of do most of the cleanup, Ravneet. Why? What were the problems particular to Yes Bank?
So very simply, I think if you look at it from the point of view of timing, the banks that you talked about which did the cleanup had their problems a lot earlier than Yes Bank. I mean, we are going back to 3 to 4 years when Yes Bank had no problems, effectively speaking, right? So I mean, I think it was a timing issue. In their case, I think it was more in terms of the sectoral stress, in terms of, like I said, cement, steel, power, which the bank managed to steer clear of. And I think the problems that came subsequently were more based on the business model, which got challenged by the macros around us. So it's not as if that all the banks got into trouble at the same time and then the other banks managed to power out of that. I think it was very clearly a question of timing. These banks got into trouble earlier and were able to then manage to find their way out. Whereas for Yes Bank, it was a much more recent phenomena. And the process of coming out of that is very much underway.
Okay. I'm just going to come to Mr. Tyagi as well. Let me just talk about DLF for a moment. The peak debt, I think, was around 25,000 crores. It's almost zero debt now. That's been a priority, and I think the DLF has been one company to really take care of that and also transform its business model in order to survive the times. But the demand part of it, Mr. Tyagi, is still a big issue for you and for other real estate companies. How do you see the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. So, on the demand part, frankly, I think especially the NCR market, which is what I know slightly better than the rest of India, I think the entire inventory scenario there is actually plagued by a large chunk of inventory, which I sort of broadly classify as unfinished, semi-finished, and possibly will never be finished inventory, frankly. And because of the fact that in most of those cases, those projects have negative equity, and people have paid partially their payments to it, and obviously the money in most of those cases to complete those projects is possibly higher than the residual collections from those projects. So that's proving to be a huge dampener in the entire NCR market. Frankly, there have been some resolutions. So like Supreme Court has asked NBCC to step in a couple of projects. Now the government has appointed this SBI administered fund, which actually, I'm very hopeful that will solve some of those problems. And so as some of that WIP inventory problem starts getting solved, I think the sector in the north will start picking up. Purely from our and some other developers' standpoint, what's happening is that there is demand for finished products as long as they are located right and priced right. But if you have aggressively located products or aggressively priced products which have been caught in this WIP stage, then clearly that's a challenge, and I think it will take more than a few quarters to fully resolve.
Okay, I mean, as a company, you're one that doesn't have problems with regards to funding. You've got the funding in place. When it comes to the way forward, Uday Kotak this morning said that only it's going to be a survival of the fittest. Only a few are going to survive. Do you see an environment over the next few years where we're only going to see a handful of builders actually manage to survive?
No, I think that is a given. And frankly, a combination of RERA, of the GST compliance, and of the access to funding. So I think in every micro market, you are already beginning to see 4 or 5 developers who have sort of, who have swum and who have swam and sort of reached the shore or on way to reaching the shore, and the multitude who are in trouble, frankly. And they would have a downstream challenge for their lenders and those pieces as well. But I think clearly you will see consolidation of 4 or 5 developers in each micro geography. And I think that's the way it's going to be.
Naveen, things continue to be challenging. You're in 2 businesses, 2 different sectors. In steel, we have on one hand the global picture, while domestic picture is still looking better, and power the reverse. How are you managing to balance both the external and internal factors currently across these businesses?
Okay, so steel has started to look up. Steel now, these months are the best months for steel. December, January, February, March, April, the best season for construction. So the steel, the demand has started coming up. The prices are definitely very low, but so have the costs come down. Internationally, coking coal prices have come down a lot, and then we have all become very, very efficient. So we are still able to almost, maintain our EBITDA margins. So steel is looking good. Power, it's very surprising that the power demand has gone down by 12-13%. And there is a huge shortage of coal also. Even though now it has improved. But till last month it was really bad because of prolonged monsoons. The production had really taken a hit. So I feel that power still, we are buying the world's most expensive coal and the world's worst quality coal. So, and then still there is scarcity of it, whereas we have the 3rd largest reserves of coal in the world. So I hope with the steps that coal ministry is taking, government of India is taking with commercial mining and with bidding on more and more blocks, so there is no reason why there should be shortage of coal in the country. And having shortage of coal in the economy is like not having fuel in your car. Like without fuel, your car can't run. So without coal, the country can't run, the economy can't run. And then if power is available and is available even more cheaply, then all the losses, just imagine earlier, say 5-6 years back when we had our own coal block, our cost of coal per kilowatt hour used to be 40 paisa. Today it is 1 rupee 80 paisa. So just imagine if the coal cost for everyone, if there was enough coal production and the cost comes down, how come steel, we are selling at 25% lower today than we were selling 1 year back? How come coal every year we are paying more and more and more? International coal prices even dropped to half. So like coking coal prices, we are able to buy at half the price than what we were buying, say 2-3 years back. So if the coal prices went down, the electricity boards, they owe all the power generators around 80,000 crores. And they produce around 1,000 billion units. If their cost went down by 75 paisa, all their losses, what they owe to the generators would be wiped out in a year because they can't start to charge their customers more. So the cost has to go down. And coal is, because 80% of our generation is still thermal. So the cost, I believe, really needs to go down for them to wipe out the losses.
Do you ever look back and, I don't know whether to call it regret or think twice about entering the power space?
No, we don't regret at all. I mean, JPL has been the pioneer. We set up India's first 1,000 megawatt power project in the private sector. And this must have been the most profitable power project in the world that was ever set up. And we repaid the entire debt in 1.5 years. And the success of Jindal Power Limited at least inspired 24 projects, more than 100,000 megawatt. If today you see that there is no shortage of power in the country and there is surplus power, it's thanks to JPL and the successful example that we set in front of everybody. Now that's a different thing. Earlier, we used to run on 102, 103% plant load factor. Our 1,000 megawatt used to run on 1,030, 1,040 megawatt. Now, looking at everyone set up power projects, selling the story of JPL, I was like, why should I stay behind? We also added another 2,400 megawatt there. And now we are operating at 35-40% PLF. So, so that's the sad bit, but I'm sure we will, because we are surrounded by coal all around us. There isn't enough for us to feed. We do not have even half a day's coal. And when I go to the plant and see, where is the coal? I said, you say there's 40,000 coal. This is all in the bunkers, because the bunkers have huge capacity to carry coal. And whereas earlier we would have 1 month coal. But then again, it's just a matter of putting our act together, because there is coal all around us. So it's only a matter of time that the coal production will increase. And I'm sure with commercial mining, this coal shortage would be a thing of past. And then again, we will be running on 100% PLF.
Okay, this is something I want to ask both of you, but Ravneet, let me come to you on this first. Where do you find the motivation, given the situation you've come into, the kind of, sort of living on a razor-thin edge of a knife on a day-to-day basis? Where do you find the strength to keep going, given that you've entered this situation and it's not something of your own creation?
I think it's just comes out of the conviction I have in the future of the bank. I think it's a fantastic platform. Countrywide presence, a big brand, people who are second to none, great technology, great product innovation, very good client connectivity. And I think if you take those for granted, then the troubles also you should take for granted. So I think if I look at it in balance, I feel absolutely super convinced about the future of the institution, and that is where I derive my motivation from.
So we've been asking all the big bankers from SBI to access to Kotak if they're looking to acquire Yes Bank or a part of Yes Bank. Is there anything we need to know? Let's hear it straight from you.
No, maybe something that I need to know. So a lot of speculation, and I can say idle speculation. Thanks to the Nikunj setting the cat among the pigeons, every media house wrote into me asking if there was any truth to these rumors. And I'll just say that just idle speculation, nothing else.
Okay. Tell us what the worst and best case scenario is currently. If you do manage to raise funds by the end of the year or whenever is the next deadline, what happens next? When we're talking about road to recovery, strategically, how do you see things shaping up? And if you don't raise funds, then what happens? Is it the end of the road?
No, so I think if you see the last 3 quarters, I think what we've also indicated is the ability to be able to accrete capital organically, right? So we've been able to downsell our assets and generate capital from that. So we've shown that we have very good test players as well. We'll take the signals and keep things going. So I don't see anything as being the end of the road. First and foremost, the possibility that the capital doesn't come is something which I don't believe in. If you had to invest in financial services anywhere in the world, tell me one opportunity which is more attractive than the private sector banking space within India. I mean, out of all the large economies, this is the most underpenetrated from a credit standpoint, very underserved. With the dislocation that's happened in the NBFC sector, with the public sector banks, having their set of challenges, I think the runway for growth for private sector banks is huge. So the only way I look at it is that as soon as capital comes in, I think not only is the runway for growth tremendous, I think in this environment we'll also be able to pick and choose our spots where we want to grow. So it'll be very calibrated growth. There's no question of throwing caution to the winds and growing indiscriminately. But the opportunity is huge, and I think just as we see that opportunity, so do investors. So I think it's a question of time before we have capital.
And so do his clients see. We can clearly see such a big opportunity that Ravneet just spoke about, that there's so much of liquidity that even good companies want. And with what has happened in the banking sector, and all the banks have become really, really conservative. And Yes Bank, we have known them to be very, very forthcoming, very, very helpful, they trust their customers, and then they go all out to help them out. They're not just fair weather friends.
Okay. All right. That's an endorsement that I wasn't expecting. Mr. Tyagi, again, when we're talking about road to recovery, and more from a sector point of view for you, where do you see things, when do you see things recovering? Anytime next year? When do you see demand and pricing power coming back? Again, you're seeing things from a slightly different point of view, but how do you see the next few years and the path to 5 trillion?
So, if you look at the real estate sector, all of us get consumed rightfully so by the perceived slowdown in the residential sector. But there is another equally robust sector, which is the commercial sector, which actually has been doing extraordinarily well. Simon, and I'm not just talking from the financial market standpoint, I'm talking from the actual leasing offtake, leasing run rate, all of those things. I mean, most of the leasing capacity that either we or Embassy Blackstone or any of the major lessors have in India is actually pretty much taken up, and everybody is operating at like a vacancy levels under 5%. The retail mall sector, again, for the well-structured malls is again doing pretty well. Yes, now the challenge is that on the residential sector, as we spoke earlier as well, there is a slowdown, especially at the upper end of the market, frankly. And the affordable is selling, but frankly, while there's a sales volume to be had in the affordable segment, at least I personally remain skeptical on how much margin is to be made in that. In fact, one of the biggest reasons for us getting into the debt trap in the first place was in 2008. We launched, I think, in excess of 25 million square feet of mid-income housing across the country, priced typically at 2,500 to 3,000 rupees a square foot. And then we were caught in an unprecedented commodity escalation. So in virtually most of those projects, we either ended up making, extremely thin margins or losing money. So we've been that road of, bulk affordable housing, which everybody seems to be going gaga about right now. But I think clearly the two big pieces, if urbanization has to succeed, if India has to grow, it has to urbanize. And if it has to urbanize, the construction sector and the real estate sector have to grow. I think from a government standpoint, be it the REIT, be it RERA, I think most of the right steps are being taken. It can be argued that whether were they taken in time, could they have been taken faster. But frankly, directionally, I think clearly their direction has been set. Unfortunately, this entire HFC, NBFC crisis last year, sort of has again pulled the plug down from a lot of mid-range developers, as we mentioned. So I think clearly, given the last mile funding solution, given some of the structural solutions and the policy solutions the government is doing, given the commercial REIT markets that are happening and the interest of sovereign funds in the real estate sector, I think the better times are clearly going to come. Commercially, I think they'll come faster. Residentially, they may still be a couple of years before it sort of fully begins settling down.
Okay, so a couple of years still.
Could be on the slower side.
Okay. Naveen, you've described how power is going to be integral, of course, in the journey to 5 trillion. Yet, you're a sector that's faced with incredible regulatory challenges. We're all aware of that. You have already seen the impact of that. How do you prepare for anything else that's to come? Because, to have that clear line of growth or that clear line of growth is difficult or at best challenging.
See, it's difficult to plan for everything. You don't know. I mean, we could never plan that actually, the Supreme Court would cancel the fuel source. I don't think there could be an example like this for any other country. While they cancelled everything that was given out by democratically elected governments of India, what Britishers gave to Tata Steel, they never cancelled those. Okay, so that was maybe more legitimate. So you can't plan for everything. You just have to see every day. You got to do your best because life is full of surprises. And when surprises hit you, you have to face them with a smile and then carry on. So I can't tell you what, so obviously one learns from one's experiences, and going forward, we are going to be a lot more risk averse. We're going to be a lot more conservative. We aim to be debt free in next 3-4 years. And remember all the time what Shakespeare said, neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend. So we are going to be a very risk averse company. Obviously that would mean that we will grow less. But then why grow so much if there's no appreciation for it? Why takes risks? I mean, the kind of plants we've set up in Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, middle of nowhere, I'm not going to go out and do those things again. Because if the country does not really appreciate all that, then I'm not, obviously these plants will make sure we were the most profitable power and steel company in the world for its scale of operations. We will be the most efficient and most profitable company again and very soon. But to think about growing and expanding and everything, new areas, I'm not going to do it again.
Okay, that's significant coming from an entrepreneur and a very well-known entrepreneur at that, someone who's invested so much in building capital here. And I know, Naveen, I know for a fact, because I've interviewed Naveen for over 15 years, I know that you've fought it. As an entrepreneur, I'm saying that you've fought it and taken every possible measure to try and protect your company. You know, when you're talking about learnings, I mean, share with us, you know, an insight from some of those times when you must have thought this was the end.
There's been a lot of times like that, but then I would say, you know, God is kind. When you just think that's going to be the end, something happens, something positive happens. So, but we just feel that because we work very sincerely and honestly in the company, that we have an impeccable track record. You know, no Indian banks have lost a single rupee on us ever. Everything is standard. So we were the only steel company that was able to make it. The only large account in the country that was stressed and has been able to come out of it. The rest, everyone else that was impacted by the coal block deallocation, they went to NCLT. Tata Steel and JSW did not get impacted with that. The rest, and we were the ones who were impacted the most, but by God's grace, and our team has worked very hard, we've made a comeback. And but these last 5 years of all these challenges have also taught us a lot. You know, you realize that you must count your blessings every day, because there's so many things that wrong happen with so many hundreds and thousands of people every day. So what we think that what's happened to us is nothing actually. You know, it's just this is a part of life. We learn from it, grow stronger, and move on.
I think Gaur Gopal followed by Mark Inglis, and now this leaves us with a lot of positivity today. Ravneet, I think risk averse is something we don't want to hear these days, especially from a bank. But going forward, post all this, how will you sort of strategize at the bank when it comes to lending, when it comes going after sort of investing in entrepreneurs or investing in businesses or sectors that could foresee challenges? What would be your strategy or your outlook?
So first and foremost, I don't believe a word that Naveen said. He's still a young man. You know, he'll brush off these challenges in no time and he'll be investing again in a couple of years. I can almost underwrite that. Second thing is that, you know, if we talk about Make in India, right? I think the crux of Make in India is not just building factories. It's building the infrastructure, the logistics, the transportation. For all of these things, you need credit. So to my mind, you know, the outlook for banking in India has never been brighter than it currently is. So keeping aside the challenges that we may face as an institution on account of capital, for the industry per se, I think it's a golden period that lies ahead of us. We did move into being a services economy, and to that extent, you know, we could live with a credit to GDP of 67%. But my sense is that, you know, we will double from here at the very least if you want to be a manufacturing economy. So I think there will be tremendous opportunities for banks to grow. Clearly, as I said, that, you know, you will need capital to grow. So we are talking about well-capitalized institutions. But having said that, I think the credit growth that comes from this part on actually will be very high quality. I mean, with all the cleaning up that has happened, all the regulations that has come in, the transparency that has come in, will ensure that the credit growth from here on will be sustainable, of higher quality. So I think the outlook for banks is very bright.
Okay. And a final comment from you, Mr. Tyagi. I mean, as a company that transformed its business model, came out of the worst, but the transformation actually worked for you. It's actually helped, and in fact, the stock price in the last year has actually gone up about 30-35%. It's the most buzzing stock right now.
So I think the only thing I'd say is that at times the solution is lying in front of you, and just sort of you keep on searching for solutions across the place. When we were in the midst of our high debt, low sales, the entire cycle, we kept on disposing of one quote-unquote non-core asset after another in tranches of 800 crore, 1000 crore. So just enough to sort of take you through for the next couple of quarters, never able to do that one big thing. When in all fairness, you know, I mean, till we realize that actually what's the asset that you will definitely not want to part with, it's our rental business. It's the country's biggest rental business. And hence, what has the maximum value? That has the maximum value. So the day sort of we decide that really, if you want to fix your balance sheet one shot, you have to, you know, part with a part of that crown jewel. That's when, you know, you got 15,000 crores at one shot, the balance sheet got fixed, and, you know, we still control 2/3 of that company. We have I mean, GIC as a world-class institution like them as our partners. So it all worked out well. But for a long time, we kept on, trying to sort of, nibble around versus of trying to address the problem with the most obvious solution that was there.
On that note, I'm going to say thank you to our guests. I think they deserve a big round of applause. It's not easy to talk about the difficult times. A big thank you for being so open and for being with us here today. Thank you.
Wow, speed bump or not, these three gentlemen here are definitely geared up to be